Welcome to What Shall We Say to These Things?
I'm TJ.
And I'm MJ.
And this is your low-key ghetto Bible study. Right now we are working our way through the book of Esther, and we've just hit midpoint, chapter 5. And so if this is the first video that you're seeing, we encourage you to head back to the introduction to Esther video.
Yes, it'll make things a little clearer, give some context, and then you could make your way up through the episodes to chapter 5.
We should probably link those in the description.
Oh yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, make it easily accessible. As usual, we are going to be summarizing.
Right. And then we'll answer the two questions we like to use. But before we get into it, this is where we ask you to pause the video and say a prayer. Let's get into it.
Yep. Okay, so as usual, this one was pretty straightforward. There are two main sections of this chapter. We're looking at chapter 5, and the first grouping would have been verses 1 to 8. And so the chapter opens, and this is why it makes sense to look at chapter 4 before you get into chapter 5, because the chapter opens talking about on the third day. Oh, so if you've not read chapter 4 or looked at chapter 4, like there's no context. So it says on the third day, Esther puts on her royal robes and she goes to stand in the inner courts of the king's house. And apparently where she was in line of view of the king, because he was able to see her from wherever he was. Right. So he sees her and he holds out his royal scepter, which we learned in the previous chapter is the "you're not going to die, I'm not going to have you killed" signal. And so she goes and she touches it, and the king then, his response is then, "What do you want?" Right? Tell me what you really, really want. Anything you want, even up to half of my kingdom, I will give you. And I think if you're not familiar with the story, Esther's response is a bit surprising. Like reading this story for the first time, her response would not be what you would expect, because she basically tells the king, if it's okay with you, if you think this is a good idea, you and Haman come have a meal with me. I'm going to prepare like this spread, a banquet. You and Haman come eat with me. And the king says, okay, cool, we'll do this. And he then says, send for Haman very, very quickly so we can do what Esther has asked. And then it jumps forward. We jump scene straight to the banquet. Right. And they are there drinking wine. I guess everybody's belly's full. They're having a good time. And he asks again, what is it that you want? Tell me what is the desire of your heart. Anything you want, even up to half of my kingdom, I will give you. And her response is that if he is happy with her, and she's still in his good books, then let the king and Haman come to another banquet that she's prepared for the next day. And then she will tell him what she wants. All right. So what were the things that stood out to you from this section? I have a couple of notes.
It's interesting. I guess I didn't look at this chapter with fresh eyes. So I don't know that anything particularly stood out to me other than Esther's composure.
Okay.
That it's here is a woman who is like in the beginning, she's standing in the courtyard. She's literally facing death, you know? And she just strides up to the king and she invites him to dinner. And then she has a whole meal with him and the guy who's trying to kill her. And you know, she wines and dines them, and she's just so composed, like, you know, like a literal queen. And that had me in awe of her, basically. But I was able to, like, at the end of the chapter, relate it to one of the things we can learn. So at the end, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that.
Okay. For me, my notes started from the very beginning of this chapter, because it says that Esther put on her royal robes to go see the king. And sis was like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die as the queen, right? I am going to die in my royal garbs, like I think in when we started with we talked about our earliest memories of the story,
Mhm.
and I think we talked about the books we had, and I remember the pictures from the books when Esther is going to see the king. She's wearing the robe and she put on her crown.
Ah, true.
She put on her crown, and I don't think any of the versions of the Bible I've read make mention of the crown. They talk about the robes, but I'm assuming that with the robes come the
Yeah.
crown, right? So she was like, I'm the queen, I'm going to look the part,
Yeah.
even if it's to the firing squad, to my death sentence. We going regal and royal, right? My second point, and I think I mentioned this to you during the week, is that Esther was the original. The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Like, she was like, before I ask you for what I want, I'm gonna feed you twice. Right? I'm going to make sure that you're well fed. And we realized, like, the common thread is that Xerxes loved sip.
Yeah, I have a note about that.
He loved the
And
sip.
what's it? I just have, what is it? What's it? While they were drinking.
Yeah,
I wrote that down.
Yeah. So she knew her king. She knew her king, right? And so she not only was providing the meal, but like the Bible clearly said, while they were drinking, she provided him with what he loved. And so I think, well, I guess we could take a note from Queen Esther.
Okay. As you said, the way to his heart is to his stomach. It reminded me of a note I had. It's not really related, but it had me thinking about something that our parents are always telling us. Well, that was a conversation we had before I went to school.
Mm-hmm.
It was be deliberate about who you eat with.
Mm.
You didn't get that conversation?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
I got that conversation. It was it. Yeah, they was essentially saying that the people you eat with are going to become your friends, and so that brought that back to me that we will have influence with the people we eat with.
Okay.
I think
I think
level of bonding
and a kind of comfort. You generally
right.
only eat with people you have some kind of connection or comfort with. We're not likely to go eat with strangers.
Exactly. So
And
that brought that to mind.
Okay, so that's interesting because I think I had the reverse thing where I ate with my friends because I had the opportunity and the luxury of being at school with people who were somewhat already my friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. They did not have that conversation with me.
Yeah,
I guess maybe from my experiences, they learned to give me that advice. Okay, all right. So here's my next note. Right. The king seemed to be willing to offer Esther anything she wanted up until half of his kingdom, and I think for me that had a twofold aha moment. One, it's like potentially he really likes this woman, and secondly, I think he was like, this woman was willing to risk her life for whatever it is she wanted.
It has to be important.
It has to be something serious. And I think that is why, like, the extent of what he was willing to give was so great, because he was like, this is a woman who is the queen, who's my queen.
I'm reminded of it. Look at her. She's in her royal robes, right?
And here she is risking her life for something. Okay. Whatever it is, I will give it to her. It has to be serious. And then, in contrast to that, what I found interesting is that she was delaying on asking for it. Right?
I guess I'll live another day. So she's like a little, I don't know, risky or.
I think I want to think that it's more than that. Right? I think
it seems as though
I think it's deliberate. Yeah.
There's a version I read that says that she delays to increase his curiosity.
That's very possible.
Yeah.
That's very possible. And to keep his belly full.
But
well.
yeah.
But I think for me it was that, to us looking at the story, to me this should have been an urgent request.
Yeah.
It was like sensitive. It needed to be it was time sensitive, I guess, in a sense. And she stalled for 2 days.
Yeah, that, like, you expect her to like run into the hall and fall at his feet
and
crying.
Beg. Yeah.
That's what you expect. But no, she's just like.
And I guess that goes back to your point about her composure.
Yeah.
And well, I guess this could tie into our at the very end question, but I think that would be a direct result of her praying and fasting for 3 days.
That's my point. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
My final point on this section is that the king does not question her inclusion of Haman.
Because she says it's a banquet I've prepared for the king, but she's inviting the king and Haman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he doesn't question her. And I think that's interesting because I was like, as the royal couple, I find it strange that your wife invites you to dinner, but she's like, bring your second-hand man. Like, to me, that's a little sus. I would have questioned it. But he does not. But then that's also something we've seen as a trend with him, where he doesn't question things. So, he was
Except
just like,
assassination plots.
yeah. And so I think it was just like food, and I get to bring my second-hand man.
Yeah.
We're coming. Okay, so let's look at the second section of the chapter, where we have verses 9 to 14. So they've gone to the banquet, and now we're looking at it from Haman's perspective. So we've looked at the queen and the king, now we're looking at Haman. And so Haman leaves the banquet feeling great because he's just had dinner or lunch or whatever with the king and the queen. And it was just
The three.
him and the king and the queen. Like, ugh. And what is interesting is that he leaves in such a great mood. But as he's leaving, he sees Mordecai. And that causes his mood to switch completely. Like, he goes from being so excited to not just being upset, but like the versions I read,
literally murderous rage.
yeah, like he leaves in a rage. And I think one version I read alluded to it being possibly because he notices that Mordecai does not bow down. And that would have triggered him, like, off with his head. But he goes home, right? And he calls all his friends and his wife together. And he tells them about how wealthy he is and the fact that the king, he's so well in the king's good books because the king has promoted him and he's now the king's right-hand man. And he just had a meal with the king and the queen. Like, it was just the three of them. But
and he's been invited.
And he's been invited to come back tomorrow. But like, with all of that going on, none of these things satisfy him as long as he continues to see the Jew Mordecai at the king's gate. Right? And so his wife and his friends then advise him that he should have a structure built and ask the king in the morning to have Mordecai killed. Right? And then after he goes off with Mordecai's head, then he will go with the king to the banquet and enjoy himself. Right? And then he will finally be able to enjoy himself. And of course, Haman loved this idea. And so he immediately had that structure built. He immediately had the work begun on that structure.
But that tells us something about, because we were was that last chapter we were talking about how, well, I was talking about how I'd never processed that Haman was ready to pay out of pocket for the Jews to be killed. And I never processed that he would have been wealthy. Because to have a structure go up like that overnight, he needs to have money to pay for laborers, to pay for the materials, and to have it done in such at such promptness means he would have had money.
Today for tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that helps us. Well, it has me even more confused about Haman. Like, not confused. We understand that he has issues, but like, he's wealthy, and I think there's a version that says he has a lot of children.
Yeah.
So that would be significant as well. He's literally like the second in command in the kingdom, right? 120 something provinces. What does he need again? Like
Mordecai did. Like, that's what he's missing.
Like one measly little Jew who works at the temple gate. He's not
The
bound
palace
to
gate.
I always say that in my head. The palace gate, right? He does that. And you're going to let him ruin this beautiful life. Like, wealth and prestige and prominence.
I think I made a note about that in how I should live my life. Okay. So that was your takeaway?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I think mine was my notes are along a similar line, but I was kind of like bamboozled because I'm like, Haman really came from dinner with the king and the queen and let the sight of one man upset him.
Yeah.
Like, one man ruined his whole day. And I think that was just dumb. Like, you literally just came from eating with the king and queen. And one man. My second thing was that Haman was not content to just be upset. He gathered a crowd to complain to. I think sometimes I want to do that. Like, here he, come, listen to me rant and complain. But I thought that was an interesting thing, that he was not going to be content to just gripe and sulk. He needed an audience. He needed an audience.
And he boasts about it first. He boasts about himself first. Like, so yeah, we kind of see who he is.
Yeah, I think it was a very good implication of who he is. Implication is not the word I want to use. Indication? Maybe, I don't know. But it just gave us a good idea, a good picture of who he is as an individual.
Let me see what else I have. Yeah, I have a note that Haman, I think his focus is misplaced. Like, if he could just, like, remove his focus from Mordecai, you know, like, ignore him, he could live a really fulfilling life. Yeah. Like, he has so much power at his fingertips. It's amazing that he will let
one man.
Yeah.
That's my point. Well, not my point. Another point I have here is that, again, he puts things in place before going to get permission from the king. He gets the structure being built. He sets that ball rolling before he goes to the king to talk about killing Mordecai. And I think, and I mentioned this, I think it was the last. No, I think it was last week's. Not last week's. I think that was chapter 3. Chapter 3. It was in chapter 3. Where that's a level of confidence. I think it maybe it comes with his wealth, maybe it comes with the fact that he's second in command, the way he believes that whatever he brings to the king will agree with and let him do. Which was interesting for me. And my final point was that there seems to be a thread of people giving bad advice in this book. Like, that's just the common thread.
That's one of the lessons, you know. Advice, be careful who you get it from.
Yeah, that was just and I guess it's, we consider it bad advice with us looking at it from this point of view.
But we know the ending of the story.
And not just that. I think giving advice to kill somebody just because like you don't like them, that is bad advice in my book. But like, for Haman, it was the advice he wanted to hear, so it was good advice to him. So I think that, like,
it solved his problem.
Yes. Yeah, definitely did. Yeah. So those were my points. Those were the things that stood out to me.
I have one more. I didn't know where to put it in. It's I think it will overlap with what I think we can learn from it.
Okay, so before you do that, can I just make one quick point?
Sure.
I was just looking at it again and my summary again, and I think, well, I guess maybe this has to do with life application as well. But the fact that he got this advice from his wife and his friends reminded me of Job. Where his wife and his friends were the ones who were like, curse God and die, and the friends were like, what have you done to cause this? So I think it was a thing of, be careful who your friends are and who you marry.
Yeah, the people around you influencing you. Yeah. But I guess they are also an indication of who he is. These are the people he would have been attracted to.
And who he chose to keep in his circle.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I have a note that Mordecai looks like someone Haman can mess with, you know. In Haman's eyes, he just works at the palace gate. He's a nobody, and he in Haman's mind, he's in I'm looking for the word, I can't find it, but Mordecai is dispensable.
Okay.
He's
easily replaced.
He's easily replaced. He's insignificant, and he makes that assumption. I don't know, based on maybe his position, based on maybe his education. I don't know why he makes this assumption, but he does not know who his connections are.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's interesting.
Yeah, you can't look at him and know who he's connected to. And so that to me bleeds into, but I guess we'll talk about it when we talk about
his daughter is the queen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought of it about it in that light.
Yeah. He had Baka.
Yeah. In high places.
Yeah.
Yes, that's interesting. Okay, so what did you learn about God? Or what not necessarily new insight, but what did it remind you about God?
This is becoming more and more difficult as the chapters go on because I think there's this underlying theme that's running through all the chapters. In this one, you see God working. I see God working behind the scenes. So God can use Haman to build the gallows, right? And at this point in the story, it looks as though the gallows are the means to Mordecai's death. But us knowing how the story ends, it is the means to Mordecai's freedom.
Okay.
And so it's just a reminder that not only is God working behind the scenes, like we don't know what's happening in the background. Even so, you could see the structure going up, and it's ominous, and it's a signal of death. But we don't know what
God intends
it for, and we don't know, what the end result is going to be, and our enemies working, and it may look bad to us, but it is for their own,
for our good.
Right. It's for their own downfall. Right.
I think Sam says that they will dig a trap and they will fall into it.
Right. That's what comes to mind.
I actually had a point for this week. I was so proud of myself. But it's interesting that you looked at it from Mordecai's perspective, but I actually looked at Esther's perspective. And I was thinking about the fact that God could, like Mordecai said, God could have easily found deliverance for the Jews some other way. Like he could have been God, done like a bazillion things to save.
You could have another what do you call it? Set of plagues.
He could have the writing on the wall could have happened again. Like anything could have happened, and he could have left Esther sitting in the palace, like chilling, doing her thing. But I think for me it was sometimes he just chooses to involve us in his plan. Sometimes he just wants to give us the opportunity to be a part
of it. Yeah.
And so for me that was my thing. Okay, so sometimes I need to make myself available to be a part of his plan. So that was my
and that, to me, that's what ministry and evangelism is about as well, because God could reach people directly, like he doesn't need us. But I think in us getting involved, it changes our lives, and so he gives us the opportunity, and he involves us because it's not only beneficial to him, his cause, but
his kingdom,
right, his kingdom building, but to us, we are transformed as a result.
Okay, so what about your life? How is your life going to be different after reading this chapter?
Okay, starting at the beginning, I think there's a time to take action. That's what I learned from Esther. She's prayed for 3 days, and I think at this point, she understood it was time to make a move, time to do something. And I think that's something I struggle with. I'm the pray until something happens kind of person instead of
pray and then move.
Yeah. So I think that's something I want to have a conversation with God about, and I want to be like Esther in that regard. We have, I'm trying to go in chronological order, but I will just have to go based on my notes. Right, the theme of advice. I want to be careful who I take advice from, and I want to make sure that they're not just telling me what I want to hear, but something that will genuinely well, they were helping Haman, right? But be for the greater good. Right?
Okay.
And the other thing is I want to have my focus in the right place so that, one little thing or one person that maybe one thing that's not going my way or one person that I don't get along with or doesn't ruin my day or ruin my life or all the good things that I have going for me. I think that's something I could learn from Human's life. And the other thing is that while I should be treating everybody the same as humans, I think I also need to be very careful not to underestimate anybody. And I'm not just even talking about their human connections,
Divine
connections. Yeah, you have.
I thought that's where you were going when you were talking about Mordecai.
I was talking about Esther, but I think more than him having Esther, he had the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac on his side, and I think I could look at it twofold. I should not interfere with anybody, but also I can feel secure. I can feel safe that, my enemies, not that I have any, but, human ones, right, are they fighting a losing battle, basically.
Amen. Okay, so I think I had a lot of the same general points. I think mine are just worded differently. I think for me, I genuinely believe that even though she had prayed, I think Esther still would have been a little afraid.
Well, death, yeah.
Yeah, I think as composed as she may have been, I think there may have still been her heart racing at a certain points. I think
what I was thinking as well is that some of her training must have come into play. She spent a year.
And I think for me it was interesting that throughout the book so far, we have seen people doing the right thing and having negative consequences. And I feel like that could have easily been an outcome for Esther. Like, she's seen it happen up until this point. And so I think that there may have as well been a little bit of that concern for her as well. And so for me, the takeaway was that no matter how fearful I am, I can trust God to be with me when I'm doing the right thing. So, especially looking back at what has happened to other people and what I'm aware could possibly happen, I need to be able to trust Him, and I can trust Him to work everything out. This is the one that I had that you did not have, and I was like, sometimes stalling is okay. Right? Sometimes stalling is okay. That was my point. And I think this one is pretty similar to yours. I need to count my blessings and not let people who might rub me the wrong way steal my joy.
Yeah.
Right? So, because he literally counted his blessings and then said, I'm not happy with any of these things because of this guy. And so I want to live on the opposite side of that and to count my blessings, and especially in situations where I may be interacting with people who I'm not necessarily enjoying their presence or who rubbing me the wrong way or I'm having some discomfort with, I want to, instead of focusing on that, count my blessings instead and not let them steal my joy. And finally, I should be wary of people who encourage me to harm people simply because I don't like them.
That's it. Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah, so that was my final how I want to live my life. I think that's all we have for this week.
Yes, it seems so.
So as always, we encourage you to share your thoughts, your takeaways, your answers to the questions, what you learned about God, what you want to apply to your life in the comments. We really want to hear from you.
Yes. And next time we'll be looking at chapter 6.
Yep, we're looking at
so you could spend the week reading it and then we could talk about it next time.
Yep.
All right, so this has been What Shall We Say to These Things?
I'm TJ.
And I'm MJ.
And until next time, we're out.